event with the one and only Hilmon Story. As you know, we love to start things off with a fun icebreaker as folks trickle in. I love to know where everyone is calling in from. So definitely let us know what city, state, country you're calling in from. I'll put my state and city, well, I guess province, because I'm in Canada. But I'm currently calling in from gloomy Vancouver. But definitely let us know where you're calling in from. And I love to know, Hilmon, we love to start things off with an icebreaker, as you know. I hope everyone who watched all the series from the first one in September up until now has little parts of Hilmon that they know based on these icebreakers. I feel like last time we now know we were like, what was it, coffee and tea? Morning or night person. This time, I'd love to know, what do you order for lunch? Because I always struggle with this.
Oh my God. That's, well, go ahead.
Are you a takeout guy? Do you get sushi all the time? Like, what do people do? I want to know.
So I have recently become a creature of habit because it's just too big of a pain to think about. I was like getting really diligent about packing something at home because I'm on this health kick and I'm getting super fit. I'm like 2 pounds away from my like competitive high school swimming weight, which is like a huge deal. Like this is a long way in the making, right? So I'm like, I'm going to chisel this last piece off. I'm just going to make stuff from home. But like that never happens. And it's just like, once I get it here, I'm like, I don't really want that. So I have actually, this is a tribute to Ned Eric, who's on our team. He's the head of growth at Closed Loop. He's also a trainer with us, does a ton of stuff. He wears 16 different hats like Dr. Seuss. But I am and I used to make fun of these people all the time. Am I like making the suspense enough here?
I know. I want to know.
This is not impressive at all. I used to make fun of these people all the time, and now I get it. So I am a Chipotle regular because it's a good enough distance for a nice little walk there and back. It also, like, I can do it online. It's consistent. And here's the thing, like, I just get like a double chicken salad with like fajita veggies, and I know exactly how much protein. I know exactly what my nutritional intake is. And it's like one less thing to think about. And I really like, I love variety. Don't get me food. Don't get me food. Don't get me wrong. Please get me food. Don't get me wrong. I am a total foodie. So like just being like someone who eats this 5 days a week is surprising the heck out of me. But you know, you put your goals ahead and you put in some discipline and it's working out. What about you? What do you do?
I struggle with it. I am really bad and I tend to work throughout lunch. I know it's really bad. And then I have a very heavy dinner. However, I'm trying to get back because like Tim says, you know, skip the carbs, avoid the 2:30 p.m. sugar crash. I get so hangry. And so I usually get sushi. I have a great sushi place down the street from me. Right. They know me by name. They know my order. But I do need to kind of cut down on the carbs and get healthy. So I usually try to make like a nice sandwich or a wrap or something like that. But Chipotle is a good call. There's not a Chipotle near me, unfortunately, but I do love their guac and chips, and their bowls are fantastic.
And now we need to add their logo to the.
It is not sponsored. Not sponsored. Hey, if anyone has any lunch ideas, I also love to hear them too. Oh, I love the GIF that you sent, Sheila. Amazing. Now I'm getting hungry. Now that we know Hilmon's lunch order, his coffee order, and if he's a night and morning person, we can get started. So today we're going to talk about sales playbooks that actually drive revenue. But before we begin, I'm going to say a few words about MSP. Hello, everyone. My name is Angelica. I'm one of the community event managers at MSP. And MSP is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and enablement, aka our modern sales pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own and help them to see around corners they might not know about. We do this through our online session like the one you're at today, our online robust forum, and our quarterly summits that we're coming back next year. So stay tuned for that. We're going to announce that soon. And before I announce our sponsor today, which is not Chipotle, a few housekeeping notes. This event is being recorded, so don't worry if you have a colleague or friend that couldn't make it. the recording and key takeaways, along with the landing page, will be made available on the MSP previous event page. And lastly, as you know, Hilmon and I love interaction, and we love when people ask questions. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat as well as the Q&A function. I'll be on stage with Hilmon to make sure that Hilmon answers them live. And super excited to announce our sponsors today, Closed Loop and Coach CRM. Closed Loop is a revenue strategy firm. They drive performance for management, sales, customer success, and enablement in the fastest growing companies on the planet. I'm going to drop their link in the chat, so be sure to check that out. And then Coach CRM is the coaching results management platform that leverages technology to drive the rep to manager communication, proven to move the needle on performance, professional development, and revenue. I'm going to also drop their links, so be sure to check both out. Now, I'm done talking. I'm going to pass it off to Hilmon to say a few words about himself. Also, for everyone who registered, you get his book, Triangle Selling, sent to your email. So be sure to make sure that you looked at that email, or if you didn't get that email, did you change it?
I did, sorry.
Okay, that's totally fair. Reach out to me or Hilmon, and we'll be sure to get you that book. Anyways, Hilmon, after you.
Sorry, I jumped the gun. I can't be trusted. My little finger over there on the.
I wasn't sure if that was me or not.
The guy from Breaking Bad. I can't remember his name, but yeah. Oh, so I got one more nugget for you. Since you always say introducing the one and only Hilmon, which I really appreciate. It makes me feel like so awesome. But I'm not the one and only. I'm the third.
Oh yes. The third.
Yeah, because that's a fascinating factoid. All right. So, hey, folks, happy Monday before Thanksgiving. Glad you're tuning in. I've got a lot of stuff. And if you've been listening to the last few sessions that we've done in Sales Performance School, we've done coaching, which was a great session. We talked about how coaching is important. We gave a framework for how you go about coaching, some of the things that people mistakenly do wrong with respect to sales coaching, where you've got some great opportunities for growth with respect to sales coaching. We knocked that out. You can find it on a page that Angelica will point you to. The last session we did was on sales enablement. The 4S stands for strategy, systems, staff, and skills. The whole idea was, how do we give you a recipe where you can overlook your entire organization, do a semi-audit or an assessment of where you are today, understand the things that really move the needle for best-in-class sales enablement organizations, and be able to kind of get in there and fix it yourself, for lack of a better term. Today, we're going to talk about sales playbooks that actually drive revenue, right? The ones that actually work. And we'll break that down a little bit. And then coming up, is it December 5th, December 7th? Do we know, Angelica, when the next one is? You'll figure it out, and you'll put it in the chat. Whenever. Say again?
December 5th. And December I also 5th. Added the first one, the coaching one, and the sales enablement for us in the chat. So be sure to bookmark that if you missed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we will be talking about hiring, onboarding, and ramping salespeople, of course. So for those folks who are hiring salespeople, if you have kind of right-sized, for lack of a better term, how you can go on ramping them toward greater impact inside the organization, it's relevant regardless of where you are in the recruitment spectrum. Great frameworks we're going to give away there for everything from interviewing to assessing folks on a level of competency to how you build ongoing tracks toward them. So tune into that one too, but let's hop back into playbooks. So what is a sales playbook? This is the term that we like to use. At the end, I'll tell you where you can get this book, which is Sales Playbooks, The Builder's Toolkit, another one of the 8 books that I wrote with Corey Bray. This is how we defined it. We defined it as a sales playbook as an effective sales playbook being a salesperson's tool for strategically planning and tactically executing the many conversations and activities required in a sales process. And what does all that mumbo jumbo mean? Basically, the idea here is that a sales playbook is something that a salesperson or a customer success person or an account manager or somebody who's at top of the funnel as an SDR or BDR should be able to use on a daily basis in their workflow. This is not something that they get when they first start. It's not the operations manual of here's how you log into our entire tech stack. It's not training, which is what we have in our LMS, which is here's everything about our product and how it works and what our sales motion is and our sales systems meaning sales process, et cetera. It's not the tech workflow. It's not compensation. You can read what's on the slide in front of me. It's none of those things. What it is it is a space where salespeople can have an ecosystem whereby they are actively leveraging the information in there. Think of the tribal knowledge. Think of how there used to be sales teams on sales floors in sales orgs that were physically next to each other. And you'd hear somebody say, hey, I used this when I was talking to this specific persona, or here's what I'm doing for demos right now. And there's a lot of information and feedback and share. Think of the sales playbook as being that place, that single source of truth, which actually has a little bit of validation on it. So it's not quite as loosey-goosey as the sales floor may have been at some time. But this is that place where you've kind of got a doctrine around how you go about doing things. That's not to say that you're putting rails on it and not allowing salespeople or CSMs to be who they are, but you've actually thought through what are the most critical elements that salespeople come up against on a regular basis that we would want to refine. Now, here's the litmus test. Your sales book is effective if it is relevant for someone who's been there for 3 months, as well as someone who's been there for 3 or 5 years. That's the key. This is what we're talking about when we say inside of the workflow. So I want to talk a little bit about why this matters, and then we're going to dig into the way that we built Sales Playbooks, the Builder's Toolkit. Was built for folks who are operators who want to roll up their sleeves and do it themselves. They don't necessarily want to hire a firm to come in and boil the ocean and come up with something 18 months later. They're like, you know what, we got this. We understand what it is that we're doing. How do we create this system? Because it sounds like something that could be effective for us inside of our own organization. What are the tools we could use, and what is the toolkit we should employ to be able to do so? So we're going to get to that in just a second. But just a little bit on the why, right? Here are some stats around why it matters. And if you read these stats, what you really come away with is the fact that there is a lot being done to support salespeople, whether that is training, whether that is marketing, creating things that they claim we never use, whether that is selling conversations that are being trained on that maybe get diluted as we move further and further away from those training ad hoc events. The idea here is, how do we create a way to hold all of these things together? Because I've said this before in other sessions that we've had, it's not about the information. Most salespeople have enough information. Most salespeople anecdotally or academically could answer the questions around what is it that you're supposed to be doing when you're in a discovery call? What is the best thing that we should demo? How do we talk about ourselves versus this competitor? What's difficult is doing it when you've got all of the dynamics and all of the variables of your salary and your number and your quota in front of you as you're having a conversation with a prospect. So how do we support salespeople with a playbook that's not net new information, but is actually at a glance, at your fingertips information that allows salespeople to be effective in sales flow? That's the goal of what we're trying to do here. So look at everything that I talk about through that lens. And just a reminder as we go along, Angelica will ping me and interrupt me if anyone has a question. There's no formality to this whatsoever. If something strikes you and you're like, hey, Hilmon, what about that? Drop it in the chat and we'll address it as we go. I built a lot of slides here because there's a lot that I wanted to cover. I'll show you right here. In the book itself, we cover 21 specific key elements that we think are essential for you to include in your sales playbook. I can't do all 21. I picked off these 10. That is 10, right? Yeah. I picked off these 10 so that we could go through these because I think some are familiar, some are not so familiar, some as terms may be familiar, but in practice for how we make that more than just early training and onboarding might be interesting to folks. So I'm going to drop these here. We're going to go through these one by one. And then at the end, we'll talk about some of these pieces around how you create an MVP, what's important in interviewing, how you glean these assets, and how you actually build something that's slick enough to be dynamic outside of the world of like a PDF or, God forbid, a slide deck or something like this that is completely static and doesn't offer a way for bi-directional feedback. What I mean by that is management feedback, leadership feedback, as well as frontline salesperson feedback, frontline customer success person feedback, maybe even feedback from product or engineering. Again, the ecosystem is what we're after. That's what makes for sales playbooks that are highly impactful. All right.
Quick question, Hilmon. For the
Oh, I can't hear you. Is that me?
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Sorry, this headset is wonky. For the research you just showed, is that done in the US or is that global data?
That's a great question. I will go and find out.
Okay.
I would say US. I'm not sure that Forrester goes completely global on their sales survey, but I don't have an answer to that question. I'll find out.
Okay, sounds good. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Let me make a note of that. Well, you'll remind me to do that. All right. So here are the key elements that we're going to talk about. You've got them at a glance here. Let's dig in. So when we talk about discovery questions, and when I say element, these are different areas of the playbook, right? So if you were looking at a static book, these would be chapters. But again, we're not going static. We're going much more interactive and much more fluid than a static playbook. So discovery questions. What do we want to do with discovery questions, and who is it used by? Discovery questions are consistently used by account execs, SDRs, management to ensure that we're holding folks accountable to asking the things that are most relevant to the folks that we're talking to. Customer success uses discovery questions when they're moving towards upsell, cross-sell opportunities. Maybe there are feature gates. Maybe you've got a freemium model and you're moving people in towards paid. Any of those types of things are where they're key. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because we're all sales professionals. We all know what discovery questions are. But what's most critical here? Here's a common thread through the things that we've talked about thus far. In coaching, we talked about being able to coach people to talk towards their winning zone. And in sales enablement, we talked about being able to define that. The winning zone, by definition, if you're just joining this sales school, the idea is there are places where you battle, there are places where you lose, and there are places where you win. You want to ensure that you have clear discovery questions that are going to evoke more thought in the places that you win. I know, no brainer, right? But if you sit and you listen to your salespeople, they might be asking questions that are very general. They might be asking questions that actually could be answered or solved for by some of your competitors. That's not doing you any good in your workflow. So ensuring that there is a place that you have as a repository for winning zone oriented questions. We're going to get to why this is also critically important when we talk about the competitive nature. Features and benefits. Great to understand features and benefits. I know they are anathema to salespeople. Good salespeople, especially B2B, are focused on solving problems, but you've got to understand the origin of the problem, what the problem ties to with respect to the product, because often you're dealing with people who are in a buyer's cycle where they've gone to your website. Maybe they've opted into your content. Maybe they're actually using your competitor. Maybe you've done something that has inspired intent data and has given them some indications around features and benefits, and they think that's what they want to talk about. Well, we need to make a string. We need to make some correlation between those features and those benefits that marketing is out there espousing and correlate those to strong problem statements, right? So the idea is, where do we make that connection occur? I can't tell you how many times we go into organizations and we might be doing something like a sales effectiveness assessment where we're listening to calls, we're listening to recorded calls, and management has said very specifically, this is where we compete, this is why we've built this, and this is where we're going to market. And salespeople are talking about features and benefits that are actual feature parity with the rest of the industry because they're easy and because that's where most of their customers or their prospects can actually nod their head in agreement. It's not as disruptive a conversation. So ensuring that we've done the work of creating a repository of discovery questions is key. The additional key here is most of us are probably in organizations that have product roadmaps or service roadmaps that continue to shift and continue to grow. As we have more green fields, as we have more opportunity, we have to be able to ensure that those features we've created and those benefits that are inherent to those features have strong problem statements associated with them, so our sales team and our customer success folks are able to leverage those in actual conversation, as opposed to just talking about features and benefits and hoping that our prospects are going to be able to make the logical leap between why that's relevant to them. These are the things that create urgency, right? So moving on past discovery questions, we're going to talk a little bit about another familiar one, which is personas. Personas obviously are used by account execs, SDRs, marketing team, and customer success. Identifying the personas. Yeah, this sounds pretty easy, right? We all know we're selling to VP of marketing, we're selling to director of marketing, we're selling to somebody who's head of communications. Great, we've got that nailed. The bigger challenge is, how do we identify the job to be done for each buyer? Job to be done is a term that was coined by Clayton Christensen in either The Innovator's Dilemma or The Innovator's Solution, one of the two books. The idea is this: what does that person have to do? And there are a couple of reasons why this is important. One, as I'm sure you know, every persona is not the same in every organization. A small to mid-sized business that's got a VP of marketing is probably very different than someone who is an organization that's a Fortune 500 company that has 10 VPs of marketing over different product lines, right? So we've got to understand, what does your persona that you've identified, what is it that they need to be doing every day? What does their job entail every day? And this is a gap This is a serious gap, particularly with junior account execs who are maybe moving from sales development reps, maybe just been in the industry for less than 3 years, understanding the business process and having deep business acumen around what is the job that this person comes to work to do every day, not just why is my product important, but what is the universe of things that they have to do every day that they're accountable for? Who are they accountable to? Who do they manage? Where do they sit in the workflow? These pieces are critical, and it's a lot for a newer or younger, by younger, I just mean tenure, I don't necessarily mean age, for a lesser tenured sales organization to remember all this across all your personas. Let's put it in a place where we can clearly outline what these things are, and you outline them just that way, with the persona, with the work that they do every day, with their workflow, their lines of reporting up and down, so that someone in conversation can actually sound as though they've got intimate familiarity with the role of the individual that they're talking to inside of the type of company that they're talking to. And then again, you're going to see this as a thread. There's lots of threads in everything that we do because these things can't be disassociated. These are all puzzle pieces that come together, right? The last piece here is understanding their pain relative to your winning zone. Right. So if I understand that I'm selling, and I'm making up this marketing thing, right? Let's say that we've got a company called Trade Show Me, right? And what Trade Show Me does is they help you to identify ROI at trade shows, right? Great tool. Hard thing to do, pinning the tail on whether or not you actually made any money by attending a trade show and sending half of your team there. Let's just say this is what the company does, right? So if I'm selling to VPs of marketing, I want to understand what else is out there. We're going to talk about this in competitive differentiation. We want to talk about the winning zone area where we compete and what it is that we do. And the key is when I'm talking to personas, I've got to know why they care, right? If it is a VP of marketing, they've got to report upstream to a CEO. They've got folks who work for them who might be in anything from communications to social to developing collateral to product, whatever all these things might be. We've got to understand where they sit and why. Our company, whose name I just forgot, Trade Show Me, was that what I came up with? Yeah. Yep. Why Trade Show Me? Hold me accountable, Angelica. Why Trade Show Me is at all relevant to them in their workflow, not just as this tool that happens to be swifter, faster, stronger, lighter with respect to telling you the impact on trade shows, right? So that's personas. Let's dig into the concept of customer stories. So we talk about customer stories a ton, right? Most of us have customer stories. We've got customer evidence. There's some great tools out there. The key here is how do you define them for your organization? And with respect to definition, the key is, are our customer stories something that we are using to create relatability so that people understand what we do? Are our customer stories something that we're using to fill in the gaps around defining return on investment? Are our customer stories something that we're using to define social proof? Like, how are we using our customer stories? And then once we've made these maybe all of the above, once we've made these definitions, we then need to start storing them. Sometimes when I run training sessions with larger organizations, and I've got a whole team of maybe 100 people sitting in the room, the folks who've been there for a long time will raise a hand and they'll say, oh yeah, that reminds me of the Acme deal. When we were in the Acme deal, we beat Beta Company because we did X, Y, and Z. And I see people sitting off to the side who may be newer, who had no idea. Or maybe they know about this anecdotally, but they certainly don't know it well enough to relate the conversation or to relate that story to a customer. Well, we're a tribe. Let's leverage this tribal knowledge and ensure that everyone understands the specifics that are necessary to convey these things and when to use them. Not every customer story needs to be told to every prospect. It's not necessarily going to move the needle all the time. So we've got to understand the context within which these customer stories should be used and with whom. Again, you can develop this inside of a table in MVP, or you can get really robust with this and go nuts. The process and ecosystem for capture. How are you capturing these things? You know, there are a lot of times that I hear anecdotal things. I'll have a coaching conversation with someone who's a senior level executive, and they're talking about something that was a difficult deal cycle and how they pulled it over the line and how they ripped and replaced a competitor. And yet they know this happened. The salesperson who was on the deal may know this happened, but the 15 other people who are dealing in that same space and having conversations all day long don't have enough intimate knowledge of that conversation or that deal cycle to be able to recite it or to be able to leverage it in their own process. So creating an ecosystem for capturing these things. Another great place for customer stories, customer success, right? what better place than having your customer success team consistently and being accountable for sharing with the sales team, here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I'm learning. You know, you guys are over here talking about this thing to this persona, which sounds really impactful and everything. But once they're onboarded and integrated and we start seeing engagement, here's what they keep telling us they absolutely love and would hate if it disappeared, right? These types of things, when you start to create a culture of this, it's amazing the types of information that you get. And once you're able to take that information, use your own bullhorn to push it out there, whether you're actually labeling these people or whether you're kind of agnosticizing it and pulling it together as a massive amount of aggregated data, goes a long way towards moving the needle in a sales cycle and creating certainty in that sales cycle with what could be a skeptical buyer. And then obviously the system for indexing, right? So once you've defined it, then you can define the index. That's a natural correlation there. Any questions so far, Angelica?
No, just really good comments from the audience. So user cases shared with a customer speaks to a prospect about the experience is very powerful in my experience. Agreed.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right, let's hop into managing resistance. And thanks for the feedback. Keep it coming. If anyone has questions, again, shoot them out there. Managing resistance. This is closed loop code for handling objections. The idea of handling objections, just like handling something, just sounds so much like somebody said something and now you've got to scurry around and do things. So just psychologically, it's a little bit offensive. Objections also, when you think of objection, it's just like a gavel and somebody with a judge's thing, and it's just not good. So managing resistance is the way we look at this, because resistance is actually natural human behavior, right? There are three types of resistance that we typically encounter, but there are three types of human resistance. There is reactance, which is just kind of like your natural reaction to something. When someone has caught you off guard, you're not ready for it, you don't want to opt into it, and you're kind of, it's like if you go to a store. The other day I was in an electronics store. I walked in, salesperson walks up to me. What do they say? Can I help you? What do I say? I'm just looking. I don't just look. I've never just looked. I'm not a looker. I go to buy things. I don't go to just look. But this is my initial reactance because I don't want to be sold to, right? So that's the reactance piece. You've got skepticism. Skepticism can be in the form of anything from saying I don't have budget now to I don't know if you work, I don't know if it fits, and I don't know if it integrates, and I don't know any of these things. That falls into skepticism. And then, the real death of a salesperson is in that space that we call inertia, which is where it's just kind of like, I'll deal with status quo because, it's the lesser known evil, right? That's a difficult thing to shift. But understanding that resistance is part of the process, it's part of human nature, being able to clearly capture typical resistance statements. If you're listening right now, if you're tuning into this, there are probably things that your salespeople are getting all the time with respect to right now. It could be, it's the end of the year, we don't have any budget. It could be we have a hiring freeze or a budget freeze right now, or we're entering recession and we've had to scale back. Any of these types of things are resistance. Now, I'm not saying there's a silver bullet for overcoming them, but there needs to be a way that you can categorize these things, label them. Why is this so critical for a salesperson? One, because it helps us to depersonalize it. It no longer becomes a personal rejection. It's no longer that, Hilmon just didn't phrase this the right way. And here's, call number 116 that's just telling me now is not a good time. This is just frustrating. Instead, it's, I'm dealing with someone who has a natural reaction to me intruding on their day and suggesting that they have a better way of doing something. Okay, got it. Let me categorize that. Let me label it. And now you've got response plays. And when I say response plays, I hesitated to put this in the slide deck because I don't want people thinking that now you've got to go and create this whole resistance manual. It goes back to when I was 14. I'd lied about my age and I was working as an inside salesperson for this company. And they had this manual of objection handling. And I would flip pages, but I tried to do it really quietly so you couldn't hear me flipping the pages on the phone to find them. They were all alphabetized. They were alphabetized in this weird way. Anyway, I'm not suggesting that you need to have a manual of resistance management or a manual of objection handling. In fact, please don't do that. What we have to train our teams to do is to be able to understand how we manage each type of resistance. So for instance, if someone is talking about the fact that, hey, we've had a budget freeze, we're not spending any money on new technology. Let's just say that's what they've said. Well, one thing that we could have inside of our playbook is how do we reframe the concept of spending and change that to a concept of investment? Or how do we change that to a concept of leveraging existing resources, right? And that's just a means of framing. How do we go about managing resistance from the standpoint of acknowledging that it exists? Yeah, it's really hard times out there. Asking permission, saying, yeah, and can I ask you a question? And then finally asking a good pain question. A lot of folks who I'm talking to right now are telling me that, it's really hard times out now. Right now, and they're not really sure how they're going to meet their goals for next year. And they haven't really put anything in place to be able to shift from where they are today, which is kind of just frozen in the headlines. That's not happening with you, is it? Anything along those lines, I'm making these things up as I go along, but you get my point, right? Being able to take these plays, these things that you know are going to come up in your sales process, and being able to move them into a playbook where somebody who is new, someone who's been there a long time, someone who's accustomed to selling one type of product and has now been moved into selling a new feature or a new product altogether, can leverage them in their workflow, is going to create a more significant impact on their sales process than leaving them to their own devices, particularly with teams that are remote now and teams that might be hybrid or working from home or whatever the situation might be that we're all struggling to deal with. Not struggling to deal with, we're all learning to deal with in different ways right now. So this concept of managing resistance, as it pertains to your organization, as it relates to things that you can generalize, and in that generalization, make specific enough that you're not boxing people into word usage. You're not telling people, here's your script for managing this thing, but instead, here's a play for managing something along those lines. I've seen be incredibly impactful for keeping folks in the game and conversation and being able to leverage their way into additional conversations around the organization. All right, competitive battle cards. I'm also noticing here that I didn't change my little no image up there, but that's okay. You guys will forgive me that, I hope. Competitive battle cards. Some things got consistent, at least the content's right. Hilmon, no good at graphics. Competitive battle cards. So everyone knows what competitive battle cards are. We probably have them. They're probably like, I won't say printed out. Let's hope we haven't done that. They might be PDFs. They might be sitting on Google Drive somewhere. They may have been in that SKO launch when we launched the product and we said, oh yeah, we've got these like 5 competitors and here's how. Anyway, you get my point. Probably stale, no good. So we've got to create a means of breaking these battle cards into a playbook so that they have a fresh state, so that we're constantly refreshing them, because not only are we consistently changing, the market is consistently changing, and so are our competitors. And someone needs to be on top of the fact that competitor X just released a new product, that competitor Y is sunsetting their product, which opens a great deal of opportunity for us to go to folks saying, hey, you're not worried about the fact that you're not going to be supported next year, are you? Any of these types of things are critical to competitive positioning. I'm not going to go through what a competitive battle card is, because I think we know. If you don't know, ping me on LinkedIn. Happy to have that conversation with you. The piece here that's most critical is outlining the battlefield. Here's why. Not so you can go to battle there. It's so that you understand we've got to get people out of that conversation. If the battlefield is around feature parity or tech parity or integrations or logos and usefulness or any of these types of things, it doesn't make sense to have that conversation, because that's where you end up discounting. That's where folks say, well, if Angela is just like Hilmon, why should I buy from Angela, or why should I buy from Hilmon? Why don't you give me the better deal? And then you've got salespeople who are chipping away at margin to get deals closed because they haven't been able to move the conversation into the space of your winning zone, which is where you are uniquely qualified to solve a certain problem for a certain persona who has a certain pain, right? Customers won from competition. This is critical, right? Just like customer case studies, it's fantastic to understand when we've won customers from competition, even when we beat out folks. If you're a nascent organization, if you're newer, if you're a startup, even where we beat out folks in the sales process, just saying that, hey, this organization chose us because they were worried about this, don't suppose this is something that's concern for you either, is incredibly impactful. So being able to pull these things again into your narrative, into your playbook, so that they are at the ready for someone once they hear that name, once they hear that customer, once they hear that competitor, once they hear any of these things that sound like they pattern match to a competitive battle card, to be able to leverage all of these resources together to pull deals through and to create some velocity. All right, let's talk product and pricing. So I know CFOs, probably none of them on this webinar right now, but we get a lot of info from our CFOs with respect to product and how we're going to price it. Hopefully this is not convoluted for you, but if it is convoluted, then a couple things we need to do. One is create a product index. Here, I'm going to beat this drum one more time. The product index needs to look like this. We need to understand what the product does, what it solves, and what its full feature utility is, and then back into the job to be done that would care about that, the persona that that's relevant to, and the pain questions. right? So that we're reverse engineering. Where is this incredibly important? Incredibly important for folks who have an inbound motion. If you're getting inbound leads, if you're getting folks who are calling and saying, hey, Angelica, yeah, I was on your website, I requested a demo, and I really want to know about XYZ feature. The challenge that typically occurs there is the salesperson goes, ooh, feature, yes, let's go. And they start talking feature, 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 feature. Not impactful. The person's got the information they need. They hang up the phone, hop off the Zoom, whatever it might be, and they go whittling away, and we're chasing them down, trying to check in, touch base, circle back, follow up, all those types of things that only salespeople do, right? So instead, we've got to be able to say, Angelica, appreciate that. Would it be okay if I ask you a couple questions? Typically, when someone is inquiring about XYZ feature, it's because they're struggling with this, they're frustrated with that, they're concerned about the other. Any of these things going on over at your organization, now you're in a discovery conversation. Now you've got the leverage to be able to uncover the problems that need to be solved for this company, keep them on the hook, or very quickly disqualify them if they're just feature hunting and those features happen to be direct parity with your competitor. But what do we do with this stuff? Got to be in a playbook, right? Because you probably have lots of features, whether you're a product-based company or a service-based company. There are probably many things that you can do for folks. You've got to boil those many things down into why they are relevant and what problems they're solving so that salespeople have a place to go to be able to get this information. Pricing guidelines, no brainer. This needs to be in there. If you haven't set guidelines within which salespeople at each level in your organization have latitude around pricing, or maybe they don't have any whatsoever, that needs to be spelled out. People need a place to go to be able to make that happen. Otherwise, we're going to get emotionally invested, right? It's the end of the quarter. It's the end of Q4. We're trying to pull something over the line. I might sacrifice margin just to get that deal done. Don't know if that's something that's going to be the right choice for your company or not. Those are decisions that you need to make. Finally here, product roadmap key. I can't tell you how often I encounter salespeople who really don't know what's coming next. They just kind of know what's in front of them. There's a couple reasons why this is important. One reason it's not important is so that they can start selling the future, right? That's not necessarily where we want to be. I've actually seen organizations that have done that and these are startup organizations, Series A, Series B, who've put themselves in position to really be like custom dev shops because they've gone after really large logos who've said, well, we really need to have this, that, and the other, done side letters and things like that about what's going to happen. Now they're beholden to making it happen, and they're no longer architecting their own product roadmap. That's a very dangerous place to be. That is not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting is that it is important for salespeople to understand the context of the roadmap relative to the persona. You see how these all string together, right? Which is then relevant to pain as it's going forward, so that salespeople understand what is it that we're trying to solve for within this specific job title's job to be done. Where are we moving to make their job easier? Where are we moving to help them be more impactful, to help them make more money, to help them whatever your thing is, whatever your value prop may be. And then in the red here, I'm just going to read it out loud in case somebody's skipping over that. Prospects don't care about your product. They care about their problem, right? So all of this is in the context of solving a problem. It's not about your fantastic product. All right. Keeping it moving. I think we're doing okay on time here. Demos and presentations. All right, this is used by account execs, sales engineers, because it's never important to train a sales engineer on how to actually do discovery and uncover pain. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So some of us have had awesome sales engineers who are deep subject matter experts, and it's important for them to understand what we're doing on demos or in presentations, so that sometimes when we are taking something back and saying, not sure that this would work for you, or help me understand a little bit more about that, or maybe not answering a question, but instead reflecting the question back so that we can get deeper information. Really important that sales engineers are on board and understanding a demo or presentation format. It makes them infinitely more impactful. It also makes the information that they share from their pillar of subject matter expertise much more digestible and much more sales effective. And obviously what I mean by sales effectiveness is the ability to move something, right? Create velocity, moving something towards resolution of a problem, or DQing them and getting them out of your pipeline. So account execs, sales engineers, customer success, demo prep guidelines. Prep is all over the place for salespeople. And a lot of times it just kind of depends upon that person's either technical competence or understanding of the industry, or get that stuff on rails. Figure out, just say, hey, you don't need to spend 3.5 hours creating a deck. Not what we do. You need a couple slides, maybe, or you maybe need to understand a demo environment such that you can ask better discovery questions and go deeper and get folks to help you understand why they would be a good candidate for purchase right? Meaning why they should be buying your product. A frameworks all over the board. We talked about training before when it came up with coaching. We'll talk about it a little bit more on December 5th when we talk about onboarding, ongoing, and enabling folks to move through greater progressions of their own career. But having frameworks around these things create accountability, they create consistency. They also create this common language and culture whereby whether you're an account executive, a customer success person, a sales engineer, whoever's on the call or interacting with the customer is marching to the same drum. So it's very easy to see and to measure what you're doing that's impactful and what might not be working so well, right? So ensuring that that is built into the sales playbook. Yes, Angelica.
Alicia has a question. Do playbooks get built around a particular product, or do they build playbooks around a use case or industry or persona?
Do playbooks get built around a particular product?
A product, or do they get built around a use case, industry, or persona?
Yes. All of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea is that it all needs to come together. So for example, with this trade show me fake product that we're talking about, right? Let's say that that's the product. And let's say that there's a freemium version and that there is, and I'm sorry, I can't do this like with a whiteboard or something. Let's say that there's a freemium version and that there is a paid version, which is more enterprisey, right? So these are our two products. Inside of those two products at the freemium level, there's probably a specific persona for whom that would be relevant. Let's call that like small business owner, right? They're not going to spend a ton of money on the product, but they'll get in there, they'll be using it. And as they grow, we can, upscale them, upsell them to the other product. Up here at this other level is maybe CMOs of much larger companies. So you see how we've already got, we've got a quadrant here of different qualifying criteria. Then as we move that along, we're thinking, okay, we've got CMO, maybe a director of marketing also at this high level organization would be important. And down here, maybe a CFO is interested in the ROI from a trade show. I know this is really hard to envision with just my hands doing hand jazz here, but that's the idea is all of this comes together and it's easily presented. I hate to be like hawking books and stuff, but if you're really curious about this, check out the book because we built this. MVP is do this stuff in a spreadsheet, right? You could get a workbook and different sheets for each of these elements. That's demos, presentations, personas, et cetera, and all of the frameworks are in this book that show you how to pull all this together. Because what you said is key. I think it's an interesting question, Alicia, because if you're asking the question, salespeople are asking it too. They're sitting in a training going, okay, I just learned all this stuff about product, and I just learned all this stuff in this other silo over here about personas. Oh, and then I learned that I'm supposed to do demos this way. Like, how does it all come together, right? This is the idea of the playbook. If you think of this from a sports analogy, you can teach somebody how to dribble, you can teach somebody how to shoot, you can teach somebody how to pass. Well, you got to do it all in the game, right? So how does that happen? It happens through the use of a playbook, right? Was that an effective? Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I just dropped your sales playbook, the Builder's Toolkit link. So be sure to check that out. The workbook is in that book.
Cool. Were there any other questions there on that one?
Nope, that's all.
Okay.
Hope that answers your questions, Alicia.
Yeah, if not, just ping me. I'm happy to chat about this stuff. I geek out on this all day long. All right, a couple more slides here. The creating momentum piece. This is pipeline velocity, right? So we've got to have an element that is specifically around creating momentum because otherwise we're leaving salespeople to their own devices. And yeah, not to say that those devices won't be great, but why not bubble up the best things that are working in the organization instead of having everybody kind of doing their own thing. So tactics for between meetings. If you're a triangle selling adherent, if you've read my book, Triangle Selling, we talk about a framework called HELP, which stands for highlighting the things that happened in previous meetings and highlighting the reasons for the conversations, educating prospects along the way. That's not suggesting that you spend all your time educating, but sometimes there are things that you can impart that help people to understand why this is a critical need for them and they need to do something. Leveraging your network, leveraging other ways in which you can help the person outside of the sales process to be successful, to create some reciprocity. And the P stands for predicting the future, right? Just spelling out what might happen in the future. This could be good or bad. This could be somebody telling you, hey, yeah, let's meet on Thursday at noon. And let's get together and talk about, next steps. You're kind of like, wait a minute, that's Thanksgiving. That's not going to happen, right? Why don't you move that meeting? Anyway, so the idea for what happens between meetings, this is the connective tissue. This is that stuff that when you've been sitting there listening to the pipeline report, and for the fourth week in a row, Hilmon's like, yeah, so I have to check in with so-and-so, or I haven't heard back from such and such. Yeah, you got to have tactics for how you're going to move the needle on this. These prospects don't just opt in all the time. Sometimes we have to nudge and help them to help themselves. The active opportunity cadence. This is something that's really key. I've seen this have significant impact on the velocity of a sales process when you just, in the same way that top of funnel, when we're talking about SDRs and BDRs, we often have myriad, maybe one sales outreach cadences, right? And it's some combination of email, phone call, maybe a LinkedIn comment or a like, or depending on how robust you're getting with this thing, right? But there's a cadence that we're following for specific outreach with the idea towards, hey, okay, at this specific touch, we will likely get some engagement. Well, there should be an active opportunity cadence. And obviously that cadence shouldn't seem cold. It has to be highly personalized. It has to be highly relevant. It has to offer value to the sales process. But if you have a cadence, then you can have an expectation of consistency in that sales process and in your pipeline. I've seen this have really tremendous impact on shortening sales cycles. And then obviously in meeting velocity planning, how do you go about ensuring that at the end of each conversation, you've got the next meeting or the next commitment or the next decision agreed upon, right? And there are tons of sales methodologies out there that teach you how to do that. But under the creating momentum element, this is something that you want to make sure is available for salespeople so that they can remind themselves, use this stuff in regular workflow. Maybe they've got an opportunity that's stalled. They come back to the opportunity cadence. Maybe they're looking for tactics for in between meetings to be able to, like right now, I'm talking to a bunch of folks who are like, yeah, it's going to get tough. It's getting toward the end of the year. We've got 2.5 more selling weeks before nothing's going to happen. And it's like, okay, well, let's assume nothing's going to happen, which I don't necessarily believe to be true. But what would you do to create value through the holidays to make sure this thing lands Q1, right? Don't just throw up the hands and then pile in with everybody else on January 3rd, say, or whatever the first Monday is, this just January coming up, going, hey, hope you had great holidays, wanted to get back together in time. I mean, come on, you're like one of 30 people who's probably doing that at that point, right? So let's think these things through and be ahead of the game. A couple more here.
Dialing back to demos and presentation, your recommendation, how long should a demo typically run?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I've got clients who are like selling bioinformatics to pharmaceutical companies, and I've got clients who are in, a demo stage that could take probably about 15 or 20 minutes. The short answer is it should take as long as it takes for you to be able to establish certainty on the part of your prospect, meaning they have a clear understanding of what you do, and for you to uncover enough pain that would make your next step warranted. So if you're looking at your demo stage, every stage should have exit criteria. What is the criteria for leaving the demo stage? Is it uncovering that they have a willingness and ability to invest to solve the problem? Well, it should take as long as it takes to get to that willingness and ability. Now, that's not to say, you get on there and you have some Homeric epic conversation with somebody that takes 2 hours because you just want to get it out of them. I don't think a demo should ever last longer than 90 minutes. And a 90-minute demo is with a team of like 8 people across different departments who all have a stake in whatever it is that you're selling, which is probably over $500,000, right? Speaking in really broad strokes there. But, I've demoed things in 15 minutes that have won a deal. And that's not pat on the back. That's just saying, keep it pithy, keep it tight. The SHARE framework for demos is an easy way to look at this. So the SHARE framework for demos goes like this. S, which is simple. Keep it simple, right? Meaning don't go in the weeds. Don't go any deeper than you have to be. The H stands for highlight. Highlight the things that you uncovered in your discovery process. The A stands for acute. Make sure you are acutely focused on the pain. This is not your chance to go out willy-nilly and bring the kitchen sink because you think your developers have done all kinds of fantastic stuff. Confusion does not create conversion. So keep it nice and tight, right? The R, relevant. Make sure it's relevant to me, my job to be done, my persona in my industry, right? E, make sure it's engaging, right? Studies have shown that speaker switches correlate to a greater degree of conversion on demos. So Hilmon getting on there, waxing philosophically for 90 minutes with no feedback whatsoever, not so good. Hilmon maybe getting on for half an hour and getting a full speaker exchange going on where people are kind of heuristically understanding what it is that I do and talking about, well, if we were to integrate this, we need to be able to do this. And can we get Jennifer on board? And next meeting should be someone that's gold, right? So if you follow that SHARE framework as a means for setting up all of your demos and presentations, then you can figure out, have I accomplished these things inside of the context of that framework? And you figure out how long it takes, right? I'm assuming that the person asking may be asking because they're in a newer organization. So, hey, you got to throw some spaghetti against the wall, keep trying some things. But once you've locked into 2 or 3 that have been consistently successful, That becomes the model. And what do you do with it? You don't covet it. You put it in your playbook. You share it with everybody, and you continue to get feedback. Maybe it's like, yeah, okay, that seemed to work for the demo itself, but the gap between the demo and actually getting a closed deal was significant because they didn't understand this piece and they didn't have enough certainty to make a decision. So we need to throw this extra piece into the demo so we can tighten that cycle a little bit and ensure that people know what they're doing. Anyway, all this, I could go deep on this thing and I won't, but I'm happy to offline if somebody wants to contact me. We can do a little micro demo combo. But that's the idea. You just roll your eyes at me the whole time, Angelica.
No, that's a whole other masterclass, but I will definitely put that analogy in the key takeaways. Beautiful stuff. Thank you.
Cool. You're welcome. All right. Content and resources. So content, marketing is always like, well, first off, we always go to marketing going, hey, we need a one-pager that does this, and we need a website that does that, and we need a case study for that, or a white paper, blah, blah, blah. We do this, own it, we do it, right? And then what do we do with it? Nothing. We use it once for one customer. So what we need to do is really clearly ensure that the content we're requesting, that the resources that we want access to, we have clearly mapped, again, beating that drum, to personas, job to be done, and pain, right? And there's micro content and long form content. You got to decide what's used for what. Don't ever, I just got one of these and I'm just like, you hesitate between like, do you give somebody advice on the sales process, or does that just look like arrogant? Like you're just going, oh, salesperson, you did this wrong. I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me your opinion on that. Here's the question for the chat. If you see an opportunity to help a salesperson with their sales process in a very like diplomatic way, like they just did this thing, they're trying to engage me, it wasn't the best path to take, and I know it's hurting their sales process, should I tell them, or is that just arrogant and bad form? You guys can weigh in on that. But the idea, micro content versus long form, right? Don't send somebody a 24-page PDF that was unsolicited, right? And don't even send somebody a 24-page PDF that was solicited. Send it and then highlight the things that you want me to look at. Tell me in my email, because I'll probably look at it all. If you just tell me the 3 things that are important, navigate me around the thing. Just go, page 3, highlighting a spot there that I think is relevant to the fact that you're trying to achieve this thing, Hilmon. And page 8, there's a paragraph there that I think is important to you. The rest of it, you can look at or not look at, your choice. But once you've made it valuable to me, I might wander around the thing, right? Like Spotify, I might discover a new song. That's the whole idea. Micro content, that stuff's gold for social. That stuff's gold for outreach. That stuff's gold for those help emails, that connective tissue that's keeping you tight, offering value between meetings. Micro content also can be spoken. Very easy to say, hey, 36% of the people that we work with are really struggling with X. Is that something that's happening with you? Whatever it might be. So figure out the micro content versus the long form content, and where these things should be used by mapping to personas, job to be done, and pain. This all lives inside of your playbook. And then actionable insights mapping. I'm not going to go deep on that. The idea of actionable insights mapping is that there are probably things that you're learning, secrets that you're learning about your market, your existing customers, about your prospects, et cetera. And if you're able to plot these things on a map, just imagine you've got like this universe of what your prospects might be and the things that they've said and the challenges that they're experiencing and how you've interacted with them. As you create this ecosystem, you start plotting these things out. And it's almost like, I don't know, the thing that's coming to mind right now is if anybody ever saw Usual Suspects, and at the end where the guy figures out that Verbal was Kaiser, so I hope I didn't blow this for anybody. It's like 20-year-old movie. That's that's the point where it's spoiler alert, right? If you haven't seen it yet. Anyway, where they figure out the whole plot at the end by like all these things that were around the room. Well, imagine being able to do that. Imagine being able to figure out your prospects and figuring out how to demo and figuring out how best to approach a certain market based upon all these little facts that you've gleaned through multiple conversations across your organization. If you viewed everybody in your company as being like a little spy, and they're all profiling constantly, and every conversation, it's like, Angelica, sure you didn't close, but what did you learn about VPs of marketing in that specific? Well, I learned that they don't like, that they have no idea what this acronym means. They blah, blah, blah. Good info. And then you begin to share these things as tribal knowledge. Just imagine how sharp your team becomes and how nimble you get in having these conversations. All right, 2 more slides. Actually 3, I'm lying. All right, upsell, cross-sell. Easy to understand. The idea here is, what are the typical characteristics of folks that do upsell, that you're able to upsell, that do move upstream inside of your product offering? And when you've cross-sold products as well, or cross-sold into features, What were the typical characteristics of those people who opted in? Share that information so that we can pattern match, look for that, and reach out to those folks. Templates for getting that conversation. This is key for account managers and customer success. And then conducting account reviews. A lot of times account reviews, we just kind of have a couple things that we're expected to do. You need a framework for account reviews in the same way as you need a framework for demos and presentations. Otherwise, you're taking a golden opportunity for getting information, for retention of customer, for developing relationship and rapport, lifetime value, all that trusted advisor stuff, and for moving somebody across your product spectrum. You're throwing that down the drain if you do not have some sort of a framework for leveraging those conversations and what you want to do there. All right. Here's the key, right? Once you've got this thing in compendium format, again, MVP is dropping something using the book, using frameworks I can provide you. I open source all this stuff. So using anything like that to create an MVP inside of a spreadsheet, great way to go. Multiple sheets inside of a workbook, sorry. There are tools that we use like Google Sites. Google Sites is free. Google Sites is awesome for creating these things. I'll show you a couple of screen shares of what that looks like in just a second. The idea is like, how do you keep it fresh? Each element has to have an owner. It doesn't have to have the same owner. In fact, I wouldn't recommend that it does unless someone's full-time job is playbook management at your company, right? But each element has an owner, which means that they are responsible for ensuring the shelf life of all of the content inside of that element. Each playbook needs an admin. The admin is the person that just ensures that it's functioning, ensures that it's getting activity, ensures that you're reporting back out. And if you do something in Google Sites, the cool thing about that is you get Google Analytics on it. So you can see what's being hit often, what's not, figure out if that what's not is just not been, people have not been made aware that it exists, or if it's just not valuable, these types of things. But you need a playbook admin like you would with anything else. Driving collaboration, that's critical. Ensuring that folks are actually feeling as though the playbook is theirs, not something that was top-down given to them, but something that is organically proliferating throughout the organization. And then ensuring that you just keep improving. Continuous improvement is critical. Last thing down there, obviously, got to be dynamic. I can't say this enough. Do not build a playbook in a doc, in a PDF or a slide deck. A static playbook is an event. That event happens once, it goes away, you release it at SKO, no one ever looks at it again, and it's useless. It's not worth the digital that it's digitaled on. Can't say paper that it's printed on. Oh no, it's not worth it. Don't do it. All right, last thing here, and then if there are any questions, we'll take them with the last couple minutes we got left. Connect with me if you want to get a demo on what a Google Sites playbook looks like. Closed Loop builds these all the time. We build hundreds of them for folks. Like I said, Google Sites is free. It's not software that you have to buy. We just leverage our frameworks that we open source in the book. We leverage them all into any of these elements to help build them out. But you've got things like, discovery that you can build in there, which shows you can drop infographics and things like that help people to glean this information really quickly on the fly. Again, this is not LMS. This isn't training. This is, you already know this. Here it is again, so that you can use it in this specific conversation. Pre-call planning. You got tables there where you can outline persona versus the pain that you'd be solving for that persona and how you navigate that conversation. You can drop in video, any of these types of things. So the idea is, how do you create content that is easily consumable for salespeople, so easily that if I'm on a call, obviously I probably wouldn't be watching a video, but if I'm prepping for a call, I might watch a video. But if I'm on a call, I could certainly look at a spreadsheet that gives me a table that shows me jobs to be done for Angelica's persona when I'm having a conversation with her. All of these things, as you create this culture, go a really long way towards truly driving revenue and truly having an impactful sales playbook. There you have it.
Wow. I made it before the session ended. Thank you,
Barely.
Hilmon. That's incredible. Timing was impeccable. I've added all of Hilmon's ways to contact him. Coach CRM, definitely check that out. Closed Loop. The sales playbook that you see on the screen, I dropped that link there, so definitely check it out, as well as the library of all of Hilmon's books that he co-wrote with Corey Bray. Definitely check out all his books. That was awesome, Hilmon. I know we could talk another hour and go deeper into different sections. Just a reminder for everyone, we do have the last series of the coaching series on December 7th. I'm going to drop the link in the chat, so be sure to share it with all your friends. And if you missed the last two, the recording is on that website, so definitely check that out. The recording for this session will be made available on that website as well before the end of the day. You'll also receive an email with the key takeaways, the this presentation as well as the recording. So I will get that over to you before the end of the day. Thank you, Hilmon. You are incredible.
You're
And thank
welcome.
you everyone for
Happy
attending
holidays,
today's
everyone.
session. And happy holidays for those in North America celebrating Thanksgiving. We are grateful for everyone in the community. Thank you.